let me start off with a real tough one.
Yeah.
How did you get here? I don't mean by the airplane.
Sure.
How is your journey in credit unions brought you to this particular place? How did you get here?
That's an interesting question. I've been defending the credit union business model for 22 and a half years. And I would characterize that, and some of my friends in the audience absolutely know this, that doing it in one of the most hostile anti-credit union legislative environments in the country. And that does something to you. I'm a political hack. I came up in the political side. I spent a year here in working for Senator Orrin Hatch, the senior advisor role there that gave me some, deep policy sort of experience and understanding what goes on before, during, and after all these constituency meetings that we ask for. And as a political hack, something changed in me. This is a cynical place. This city is, it's easy to get cynical, but something about cooperative finance and defending what all of you do for a living it turns out it's an honor. It's not, in my line of work, this is one of the coolest things you could possibly do. You've got the nobility of the cause, and there are many noble causes out there, but the nobility of cooperative finance, you've got this passionate 144 million, this mass of America that love their credit unions, and then we've got the resource, the machinery of the credit union system all coupled together, and from a political practitioner's perspective, it's like heaven. And so, I loved working at the state system level. I feel like, America's long been called the laboratories of democracy, and I think from an advocacy perspective, having a system that reaches across the breadth of every state house in the country, that's the laboratory. And so the ability to kind of pivot from that to the national stage, it turns out I care deeply about all of this, and given the opportunity when it presented itself, I don't know. In spite of the fact that you are all very scary people, I thought I want to do this. I want to do my best to ensure that cooperative finance survives in this country.
You talk about the laboratory of America, the laboratory of American democracy, and that's a great phrase. It's true. I mean, you're not the first to use it, but it is one that we don't remember all the time. It's messy though in that laboratory. I mean, it's hard, and I think people sometimes get the impression. I've thought that it's easy, or why can't you just be on offense, or why can't you just introduce a bill and it becomes a law? I mean, how do you see the challenge of what we do in advocacy, particularly in this moment of sometimes chaos, confusion, certainly a lot of competition for messaging and advocacy itself? So how do you see that moment?
Well, I think everybody in the country has probably experienced what their observation is it's become more performative. Politics feels like it's performative. Partisan politics are particularly intense. I mean, that's an interesting experience. I mean, I have conservative pedigree, professionally, and I see Bill and Keith and other Californians here that, I know that the Californians were scratching their head. What happens to Scott Simpson? This conservative bumpkin from a flyover state. Californians will eat him alive, And what's great about credit unions is it transcends political ideology. It genuinely does. And not every issue can do that, but this is, the social mission, the heart, is fantastic, but there's this kind of private sector business solution that you can deliver. And so it transcends politics. And I think one of the challenges that we have as a national association, as a movement nationally, is we have to make sure that we're always positioned to endure wherever that ideological pendulum swings. And it used to predictably move from left to right, and we could say, okay, if the conservatives are running the show, we have to worry about taxation. If the left is running the show, we worry about regulatory overreach. The pendulum's flailing in 100 different directions now. It's much harder to predict where it's going to go. But one thing is I'm absolutely certain of is this business model has to endure wherever it goes. And that's kind of the difficult part of wrangling all of you and trying to figure out how to align around intense ideological strain in our country.
Can you dig into that a little deeper? 'Cause I think you're spot on, but dig in a little deeper because I mean we're all partisan. We all have a little bit of partisan. We're hopefully partisan for credit unions, but we also have when we go home we're for this team or that team or this person. How do we maintain that with credit unions being at the forefront, whether it's in messaging or the way we introduce policy into the equation? How do you see us?
Yeah, I mean, I think this group is working on that every day. They've got a pretty good sensibility of the brand equity of each of your institutions in your marketplace has to endure that same strain, and you're careful about how to use that. And I think that is we have to call balls and strikes. If somebody votes or proposes policy that harms credit unions, regardless of party, we have to engage that. And this is another thing that I think I worry about is we profess a powerful grassroots machine. We do. I think we just experienced, the execution of, I think, the high watermark, right, of 800,000 plus contacts to Capitol Hill, which is fantastic, but it's anemic if you think about it. We had 800,000, and it should have been 17 million contacts to Capitol Hill on taxation of all things, and so it's the proper application of political energy to influence policy, and I think at some point figuring out how to use that political energy to facilitate the retirement from public service of folks that want to harm us. And so I said that I tried to be diplomatic about that, but it's, there's 144 million Americans who love their credit union. And you're going to get sick of me talking about storytelling, but the transactional work that you do every day changes the lives of people. And you know that. The worry that I have is that, the cosmetics, the optics of our success will move faster than the story, the humanity of what we're doing, and we will lose policy based on those optics. And we've just got to lean into that storytelling, the humanity of what we do, because it's absolutely true. I've had it in my own life, in my own family, and I've talked about that before. But you all know it. I've had these conversations now across the footprint that I work in. I've seen it, and it's more than cosmetics to them. It transforms lives. It's economic freedom. I'm sorry, I'm like monologuing here. Economic freedom is one of the foundational pursuits of happiness in this country, right? It is why people came here. And we are the facilitator of economic freedom. And I am fiercely devoted to that. I can't think of a better way to spend the energy of my career than defending that and making sure that in the mess that is public policy in America, that's never forgotten. And and if it's not us, who is it? It's us.
Yeah. So, two thoughts cross. One is that I've seen this maybe even I've experienced it myself, that telling that story so often can become, people can tire from that.
Sure.
A, and B, I do wonder, there are some, I've heard this feedback, that maybe it's superficial or it's, I don't know, greeting card advocacy, where, you just, tell a nice story and then we're all done. No, it seems to be, to me, more than that. So how do you combat those two scenarios where it's either superficial storytelling, because you're saying something deeper than just tell a good story. And in fact, you wove it into common principles of economic freedom. That's pretty important as a context. So,
well, I think in the marketplace, the credit unions, you're all running that race, right? Trying to maintain relevance in an increasingly complex world amongst a population, a growing, new adult population that expect something different from their financial services company, right? And it's about technology, it's about ease of use, frictionless. It's their, institutional loyalty is something different today than it used to be. All of that stuff, and I think that applies. But affordability in this country is the whole point. I mean, I've got 3 daughters. They've all started their families in the last several years. They've off on their own, and there are 2 of them one of them is they bought a home that they can barely afford. They're house poor. I have 2 other daughters that I'm not sure how. They can't even see the path, right? And that's not unique. That's the masses of America. And it's one thing that just infuriates me. I'm trying not to use bad words, but it infuriates me is the when the bankers say that somehow we've lost track of what modest means. In 1934, modest means was the masses of America. Mm-hmm. And affordability today is the masses of America. It's everybody. It's more than 144 million people. And so we haven't lost our way. We're only scratching the surface. We have work to do so that Americans can find that pursuit of happiness, that dream. So, sure, we could get lost in the cosmetics, but the marketplace won't allow that. You're too good for it. As an association, we need to be better at helping you see the horizon and convening the family in a way that allows us to meet that moment where, the kids that I have that understand Robinhood more than they do a credit union can execute on this gift that is cooperative finance in the country.
I can hear in your answer, you're starting to develop a list. It sounds that way to me, of kind of what are the main challenges in your mind. You've been a listener. I've seen you do it, and you're great at that, listening to credit unions and getting from them what they see as the challenges in their own little cul-de-sac. And so as you've done that listening over 22, but particularly lately since you've been thinking about it from a national standpoint, do you have your list of like what are the challenges that you think, and you're mentioning a few, but how would you rack and stack that right
It's
now?
funny, the last 2.5, 3 weeks, a lot of people are talking to me. And I had a conversation to Kelly. I'm sure the lights are making it hard, but Kelly from TrueMark last night, we had this meaningful conversation about this very topic. I mean, one of the questions that I got from the search committee about sort of my focus is we have to fly the airplane. I'm a pilot. I'm not a good one. None of you would want to fly with me. But I mean by that so far my takeoffs equal my landings, which is kind of the scorecard for that. But I'm in statistically the most dangerous category of pilot that there is. But in aviation, there's this saying that don't forget to fly the airplane. It's a complex instrument. There's so many things that you have to deal with. You got the the equipment you got to navigate. There's this whole communication system you have to go through, and more than one bad news story has been created because you get too focused on something and you lose situational awareness and you don't come home. And I think that's true for what we're doing here. Is we're trying to transform the way we conduct advocacy in this city, and we have got to stay focused on flying this airplane while we improve it. And we can't get lost in little things. So for me, that is how I'm forming my list, is keeping the airplane flying and then rebuilding the machine. And that's a lost metaphor that can also get tiring. But and the other thing, can I continue monologuing? Please. Sorry. No. The other thing that I think is interesting is everything that we do as a national trade association, there's two lenses, and I don't think as membership we think through that too much. But I said it at the beginning, I'm a political hack. And I tried almost everything that I've ever done. I started in Utah in the middle of thermonuclear war with Science Bank. But everything that I've tried to do about the associations that I've been hired to work in the last 22 years is to run everything through the lens of what does the policymaking community think. And I can tell you that in Washington, my former employer, he could not articulate the difference between trade associations. Mm-hmm. He couldn't. There's not enough bandwidth in the staff or in the principal in those offices to articulate that difference. And sometimes in our family, sometimes we create noise sufficient to like that dissonance is worse than silence in a city like this. And that noise could be lots of things. It could be distraction where as an association, we're building something that is really climbing a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. And I think the organizational imperative of this association is to defend and enhance the operating environment for credit unions. And we ought to stuff everything through that lens and make sure that, and I'm asking you to do that same thing. Every decision, every view that you have is to put it through the lens of what does the policymaking community think of that? Do they have the ability to process it? Because they don't. I can assure you of that. And so we don't get too many bites of the apple. We have to be as succinct, as distilled, and potent in our messaging to them as we possibly can be. And so that's how I'm forming my list. That's what I hope we can as a system figure out is defining the absolute organizational imperative of our trade association advocacy systems and go make that.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not funny, but it is interesting from time to time how people will run down that dark alley of co-opetition or whatever, and it's not amusing because there is so much more that unites us inside here, and we're not big enough to have a fight like that. That's just silly.
Well, it's not just trade association politics. It's also sort of ambition. Yeah. It can be lots of things, right? And we just have to, I think, be disciplined and sort of make sure that this organization, the convener of the credit union family, is as focused on the organizational imperative as it possibly can be. Again, from a political hack who has, I've seen in California, I'm keep looking at you, Bill, and Keith and others. In this year, we had 4 white whales, right? CRA, elder financial abuse, interchange. Like any one of those would have occupied a trade association full time. Any single one of those. And we cannot afford to be anything but world-class advocacy professionals, linked arms, shoulder to shoulder, because we are wildly out-resourced by our enemies. And I mean they are enemies, right? They are, you know this, they're devoted to destroying the business model. And we've got to be so good at this. And again, our power has to be distilled. And what's weird about that is you've also heard me say that it needs to be diffuse. This is one at the ground. Cash is the mother's milk of politics. You heard, I think it was Jesse Big Daddy Hrindra from California that coined that phrase. But it's also, stored political energy. And we are capable of being absolutely crushed by that stored political energy by the antagonists that are on the other side of financial services. I think, on the other side, there are forces developing that are also have the capacity to combine with that to do harm to this business model. And we are small. We're David in the story, right? We are David, and we need the ground. That's how 800,000 contacts. We know that about 24,000 contacts went into a couple of very important congressional districts, Ways and Means or Financial Services, Purple State districts. We know how that happened, and that's why we're still here. And we've just scratched the surface. And we need to have the full understanding of how to unleash the 144 million Americans, because it's their undeniable will that they have access to cooperative finance in this country. They've made the choice. They don't want that taken away. And then there's the rest of them that are looking for a way. And so I can't be more bullish. I'm giddy about this opportunity. We're on the cause. I mean, what's better than this? Right. So there's a place to go. We've got unbelievable footing. You've built something here that I thought unthinkable for 20 years, and to have that concentration of capacity is we cannot screw that up. And so I'm going to be fiercely devoted to that. I recognize, as you said, I've got to listen and understand where frustrations occur in the marketplace, and we have to respond as an organization to a strata of credit unions that have different needs based on where they are in their arc of history, their development. We've got to answer to all of that because we need the family together. So,
Bill Cheney, you mentioned Bill. He gave me when I became CEO, he gave me his magic wand. I don't know if he remembered magic wand. I could do anything I needed to do. I'm going to give it to you too. It's damaged, it's broken. It doesn't always work. But so I'm handing it to you for the moment because I'd really like to hear. So if you could change one perception, one. Just one, I'm going to use the word perception. One perception from Capitol Hill, from policymakers about credit unions. Is there one you would focus on? If we could just target like a laser on one perception that you think might be maybe a game changer, how would you think about what that might be?
Well, this is risky to talk about in the family because I don't know that we have had this family conversation very well. I think we need to figure this out, but and I think this has actually grown in the last 9 months. There is a perception that as a credit union grows, it departs from its capacity to deliver on the philosophy, the originating philosophy of credit union. And I know that growth amongst the family, in whatever form it takes and the history that we've walked, is a source of some frustration. But that narrative is 1,000% false. Scale drives value. And credit union members, as credit unions grow and gain capacity and efficiency, the delivery on Ed Feline and Roy Bergengren's promise is more perfectly delivered. And it that's not to take away from the proximity and capacity of the mighty credit unions that are the lifeblood core. I'm not going to use, we call them quantum credit unions in Utah because small is not the right word. There's power in every credit union that we have and their capability. But I think the narrative that I would dispel today is that somehow, as a credit union grows, regardless of its size, that something's changed, and that's a lie. It's just a false narrative. So I would change that if I could wave the wand.
You're hinting at something, though. I'm hearing that maybe we need to hear that story too. Maybe we need to come to that understanding too, because it seems to me if we're not convinced that that's true as a family, it's going to be hard for us to leave the family dinner table and explain that to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I have worked for 22 years in what I think is probably the most concentrated credit union market in the country. 72% of the state in Utah uses a credit union as their primary financial institution. I've seen at least 2 CEOs of our credit unions, and the sharp elbows, they're stacked on top of each other. And I totally understand the competitive strain that comes when, you're a volunteer, you're a board volunteer, and you get an outbound call from a large credit union, and you're climbing your way through trying to keep your credit union alive, and you love your credit union, and you can see the value that it provides, and then you get an outbound call from the call center asking you to refinance your car loan. Nothing pisses you off more than that. I tried not to use bad words. Sorry, Keith. Keith, I'm sorry. I know you have a tender heart, so I get that, and those competitive forces are and that's a strain in our world. But we are better because of competition. We're better. I mean, this free enterprise, that's part of that conservative side that we were talking about at the beginning. This is a solution that uses free market America, right? And credit union members of every stripe have benefited because of that contest. So, again, I don't know that I can be Carter to the Sadat and Begin of the credit union challenges that we've got, but we've got to figure out how to have those conversations because we will lose fast if we fracture. Mm.
So I want to make sure we get to some audience questions too, and because I'm having fun, but I want to. And one of the questions is, what could we do to work to preserve the health and vitality of small credit unions? So this fits right into what you're saying. There are several challenges facing our institutions. That's true for all, but particularly small. Do you have more you want to say on?
Sure.
Yeah.
The first thing is convening the family. I think in every way that we can. We had a conference in Anaheim, California, a couple of weeks ago in California. There's the Shapiro Group, is their small credit unions, Quantum Group in Utah. Great conference, and as you know, when they're together, they're powerful, dynamic. We get to hear the pain points. They are so good at creating solutions for one another and sharing resource. And I think that's a primary responsibility for us, is to convene, to listen, and then to go out and find solution. And then they use the megaphone to scream at financial institution departments in state capitals and in Washington, D.C., making sure that regulators understand that one-size-fits-all regulation is destroying them. That they are crushed under the weight of indifference from their regulator. And, I think that's what I can comfortably yell that into the rotunda all day long. And then, the league infrastructure is, Daniel Patrick Moynihan is one of my favorite senators of all time, just a brilliant guy. He used a quote, this is a goofy quote, I apologize, but he said, "Nothing propinques like propinquity," meaning nothing makes you close like being close. And I think that's what's great about the ecosystem that is America's credit unions and the state leagues. They're close. And making sure, I think my responsibility is to ensure that the leagues hear and see and are empowered to take advantage of their propinquity. So I hope that's an answer.
There's a bunch of people looking up propinquity on ChatGPT right now, but then the next one fits into that as well. How can America's credit unions support credit unions at the state and local level? I'll add to that. Obviously, our coordination with the leagues is so critical. How can we be better at that? I mean, that's something that I certainly have tried, but I know we can do better. How can you help with that as we move forward?
Well, this is one of the things Kelly tuned me up on last night is in intellect. Like I do think we have brilliance in our system. We've the America's Credit Unions team, research, data, business intelligence, all of that stuff, and our ability to cull through staggering amounts of public policy, I think allow us to bring an amazing amount of intellect to this. And so, again, I think helping the system in every state capital feel like they have and have full access to the greatest resources we can acquire.
Right.
That's how I see it. I've seen it deployed. I mean, it's not like we're inventing anything here. You inherited some of that. I'm inheriting from it's better, and it just needs to continue to get better.
Yeah. Political hack question.
Yeah.
No, that's not what it says. And you're not a political hack. I know your background, and it's a cute phrase, but you're much better than just a hack. I know that. Given your political background, what's your assessment on the attack on credit unions' tax status? Where's that coming from in your estimation? And where's the pressure? Where's it building? Why is it building?
I think it primarily emanates. I mean, this is, again, it's where I come from. But there's a building on the corner of Main Street and South Temple in Salt Lake City. It's the headquarters of Zions Bank. I can tell you that's one of them. And there are more, right? Because they understand that they can break this business model with the revocation of the tax exemption. And we use history to predict the future. I've got a brochure. Dick Ensweiler, who he was with Feline and Bergengren. Some of you know that at the founding. But he gave me a brochure from 1949 that was created by some fake tax policy organization that happened to be headquartered in the same building. The address is on the back where Continental Illinois Bank was, which a failed bank, famously failed bank. But there were 4 institutions in 1949 that had tax exemptions: production credit associations, mutual savings banks, savings and loans, and credit unions. In 1951, 3 of them lost their tax exemption for reasons like they had abandoned mutuality, for one, but they lost their tax exemption. Where are they today? There's aren't. Those charters are non-existent, and the bankers know that. And if they're successful in revoking the tax exemption, now I actually think, and it's a choice that every institution has to make. You can operate a cooperative without the tax exemption, I'm guessing, but it will forever change, and it will cost America, and it will push Americans further away from economic freedom. And they couldn't care less about our 9% of deposit share. They couldn't care. It's it was single digits, right? That's not what it's about. It's the fact that you exist, that you're in the marketplace. You put downward pressure on the 91% of the market they have. Mm-hmm. That margin is what they care about. And it's worth it for them to spend their, handful of millions of dollars every year to make sure you're on your heels defending your existence instead of leaning into the mission. And so I view that as our responsibility to bring the denominator to their narrative. They never do. They never bring context. They'll talk about the growth that you've had in business lending, but they will never say what the denominator is. They'll never say compared to what. And I think that's our responsibility, is to make sure that we remind policymakers that they need to be asking that question. Compared to what? Because they lose every time. The banker's argument about our tax exemption evaporates with context. And it doesn't matter what it is. Stadium naming rights, merging, tax exemption, business lending, doesn't matter. With context, their argument on every one of them evaporates. And that's why I'm asking for stories. That's why we need to be prepared to tell that story, is to bring context to their superficial argument.
I want to give you the last word. Thank you. This has been very special. We could have this conversation all day, and we have, as you know, but I think for people out there, getting to know you, getting that opportunity is really important. Because as you know, one thing Karen and I have learned in this is that this is a family.
Yeah.
This is, you don't get to just, this isn't transactional. You've got to be part of it. It's got to come from here. It's important to use this too, but it better come from here. What are you excited? I mean, what do you think about this next move? I've got a countdown, by the way. I'm ready to
57 days.
Is that what it is?
I know.
Why, you've got a countdown. Okay.
I'm investing.
I'm the outgoing, just to be clear.
I'm investing in Kevlar.
I know you and Sam are excited about this. I can read it, mostly because you want to get this right. But what else? How are you thinking about this?
Well, it's invigorating. I said at the beginning, to defend what you do for a living is one of the coolest ways I can make a living. Like I can't think of a better way to spend my career. And then from a practitioner's perspective, I see so much potential in our capacity to influence the sausage-making factory that it is Washington, D.C. Like there's so much capacity, and it's latent, and we haven't fully tapped it. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing that will save us is raw political will. I mean, it's stories, it's narrative, it's all that stuff, but ultimately it's going to be raw political will. And we have to figure out, and for me, that's what I've spent my whole professional life figuring out, how to harness political will. And to do it for this cause is a dream. And so, there's going to be a lot of competing interests for that, what I hope can become a almost singular focus.
Yeah.
And I've got to be a strong listener and understand directionally, what the family really wants and sees. But I also think it's my responsibility to hold up a mirror so that you have absolute clarity of what it means, where your association is, and how to best engage lawmaking. Because I asked this question at the Western Credit Union Management School. I've been teaching for a number of years. I asked this question the first of every class. It's sort of, why are you here? And they're smart aleck answers like, because my CEO told me to be here. But ultimately the question is, why are credit unions here? And they talk about the aspirational visions of Roy Bergengren and Ed Feline. The answer is because the government says you can be here. And the same is true for the tax exemption. I asked the question later in the class, why do you have a tax exemption? And I get the answer. because we're not for profit member owned cooperative or organized under section 501c1 or 501c14 of the tax code. No, it's because government says you have a tax exemption. That can all change in a minute. And we're fragile, powerful, successful, delivering in unimagined ways. You're the envy of the cooperative system, in America. But it's on a razor's edge, right? We've got to act like that. We have to be so good at this, and I don't know. There's something invigorating about that.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to give it a shot.
As you know, the members are at the center of everything we do. What do you need from them? What's your call to action? What do you need from them in the next time period as you make this move? What do you need?
That's a great question. The needs are multifaceted, but I think like the emotional discipline to stay united. And whatever that means. And that means wrestling with your National Trade Association and making sure that I see what you see. Absolutely. But we have to be emotionally disciplined and recognize that we will not win divided. We won't. That's what I need.
Scott Simpson.